Good morning and welcome, everyone. I'm going to give everyone a moment to find their seats, and we are going to dive in. Thanks so much for being here, everybody. I want to welcome you to the annual meeting of AFP Chicago 2022. My name is Nathan Armstrong. I'm the AFP Chicago president. I'm the Senior Director of Foundation and Corporate Relations at WTTW and WFMT. I want to thank everybody for being here, and I want to thank our panelists, who you're going to see later, for being here, and happy holidays, everybody. Really excited about this. I'm going to start with a little bit of housekeeping. In order for us to communicate openly and honestly, AFP Chicago proposes a brave and safe space agreement. The agreement is that all participants will help to create our space while bearing these principles in mind. Keep focused, notice power dynamics in the room, create spaces for multiple truths and norms, be kind and brave, be mindful of the space you take up, examine biased systems and processes, and look for learning. And AFP Chicago recognizes that the land on which we live and work includes the traditional homelands of the Miami, Sauk, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, and the Council of the Three Fires, the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations. Our city is still home to more than 40,000 Native Americans. By acknowledging the land, we recognize that it holds significance for its original stewards, the Native nations and peoples of the region. Today is a celebration of your commitment to our profession and your involvement with AFP Chicago. As members over the past year, you have shared your expertise and practice with others, and you have taken on the responsibility for making our worthy profession stronger. You have become a member of a large and welcoming community of fundraising professionals, and I thank you for your participation in the chapter over this past year. Today's theme is 6 degrees of philanthropy. We can all recall a time of making a close connection with someone we just met. Today, we expect that has already happened with you in this room and the like-minded people that surround you. This is a group that dares to dream, connect, and change Chicagoland through the power of philanthropy and connectivity. And we hope today's program leaves you feeling inspired to create new partnerships that enhance you personally and professionally and serve our community. We are thankful to have the fundraising school at IU Lilly Family School of Philanthropy as the presenting sponsor of today's program. Dr. Una Osili, Lilly Family School of Philanthropy's Associate Dean for Research and International Programs, will share information with us during the program. I also want to thank our meeting sponsor, Evolve Giving Group, our sustainer level sponsor, Alexander McNabb and Company, our in-kind sponsor, Deja Vu's Photography and Videography, and our chapter champions, Advocate Aurora Health, Alford Group, and Campbell and Company. Each year, AFP Chicago holds its annual meeting during our December program. AFP Chicago's immediate past president, Tula Gogolak, will now preside over the 2022 annual meeting, and we'll get that started.
Thank you, Nathan. Oh, I'm going to go off script for a second. I love this meeting. This is my favorite meeting of the year. It's just so fun to start the holiday season with my professional friends and family, and I'm just glad to be here. Okay, as the immediate past president and chair of AFP Chicago Committee on Directorship, I call this annual meeting to order. We have one agenda item this morning, and that is the approval of the 2023 slate of officers and directors. I am proud to present the following slate of officers and new directors for election with one-year terms beginning January 1, 2023. The proposed slate has been presented and distributed to the membership and presented on the screen for your convenience. I would ask each individual to stand as their name is called. President Ann Grant, President-elect Carlos Trejo, Vice President Continuous Learning Dottie Breboy, Vice President Member Engagement Ashley Gill, Vice President Resource Kelsey Nelson, Vice President Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Access Judith Coleman, Treasurer Christopher Chanston, Secretary Sarah Leahy Danahy, Immediate past president and appointed officer Nathan Armstrong. For the board of directors for 2023, Ashley Adibi, Lauren Birchlove, Amy Funk, me, Tula Goglak, Elizabeth Halajian, Christiane Hanna, Ishan Johnson, Anidra Kerr, Derek Lambert, Joseph Like, Carrie Lauder, William Naley, George Ratton, Evan Marie Rayford, Kathy Slaughter, Kitty Snow, Amy Tanucci, Christopher Toft, Kimberly Van, and Susan Zellner. Okay, you may now take your seats. Please note that only the current members of AFP Chicago are eligible to vote, and you have a member ribbon attached to your name badge. The Committee on Directorship and Board of Directors recognizes all of our members may not be able to attend the annual meeting in person. Therefore, members who are not able to join us today were encouraged to cast their vote electronically by December 1st, 2022 at 11:59. Those members who did not cast an electronic vote, with a show of hands, all in favor of approving the slate of officers and directors as presented and distributed to our membership, please raise your hands. Please keep your hands raised until the votes have been counted by AFP Chicago Association Management Team. Okay. Well, congratulations to our new 2023 Board of Directors. Okay. I would also like to thank individuals who will leave the board on December 31, 2022. I would like to ask the following individuals to come forward when their name is called and receive our thanks for your dedicated service to AFP Chicago. And please hold your applause until all names have been announced and everyone is standing. Teresa Battaglia. Thank you, Teresa. I guess so. Okay, thank you, Teresa. Yes, just here, yeah. Patricia Broughton. I did too. Yay. The other way. Timothy Hammerling. Is Tim here today? And then Cameron Johnson. Are they here? Okay. Well, Teresa and Pat, thank you for all your service. We've been on the board for a while, and I've appreciated everything that I've learned from you guys. Thank you. Okay. Rochelle Jerry, who is also leaving the board, is unfortunately unable to join us today. So thank you all for your dedicated service. We truly appreciate it. Now, I would like to thank Nathan Armstrong for his leadership as president this year. There it is. Thank you, Nathan. Here you go.
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And in the fine tradition of handing people things and having photos taken, I'd also like to bring Ann Grant up, our president for next year. And this one is a little more elaborate. Ann, your ceremonial gavel for presiding over next year, and we do have to do a photo, actually.
Yes.
Because the gavel is just so...
Hold this part of the gavel?
Yes. Okay, so I'm done.
I think we're good.
You both get a break.
We're good. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate everybody's patience while we handed people things. It is, I say that with irreverence, but the truth is it's an incredible privilege to work with these people, and we do take that very seriously in our chapter, the opportunity to work with some fantastic folks. So thanks for letting us recognize those people. It is my great pleasure today to also introduce John Hebler, who, in addition to being a past president of AFP Chicago, was the 2020 recipient of the President's Award. John will present the 2022 President's Award to Patricia Broughton, CFRE, Senior Consultant at Evolve Giving Group. The President's Award is presented to a fundraising professional who has demonstrated outstanding leadership and service to the AFP Chicago Chapter, and that is an understatement when it comes to Pat. Without a doubt, Pat has been a dedicated member of this chapter for many years. And with that, I hand it over to John.
Thank you, Nathan, and congratulations on your successful year as president. And I wish you all the best for the year coming. Good morning, everyone. Excuse me. Pat Broughton has been a member of AFP for 30 years, and I'm proud that I've known her for 20 of those 30 years. She's been a director of the AFP Chicago Chapter for the past 8 years. That includes having been the vice president of IDEA, our first vice president of IDEA. She was in that role for 3 years, and she also served 2 years as treasurer of the chapter. Pat reinvigorated our chapter's languishing efforts toward diversity when she became our diversity officer. She led us to be the very first chapter in AFP to embrace IDEA as a comprehensive framework for our work. IDEA is inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. As vice president, Pat asked the board some very hard questions about diversity and helped hold us accountable for the answers. Embracing that discomfort, some of her questions made us uncomfortable. And embracing that discomfort and taking action to address and change systemic behavior changed our chapter's approach to diversity. Her leadership on IDEA is courageous and consistent, and that includes times when progress is halting or frustratingly incremental. Pat co-founded 2 of our chapter's affinity groups, the LGBTQ+ and the White Fundraisers Advocating for Racial Equity. By leading us to take action in embracing and engaging individuals, groups, and organizations who had not previously experienced full inclusion in AFP, Pat has helped AFP better fulfill its potential of serving all fundraisers. The evidence of our IDEA success under Pat's leadership is seen in our membership profile, our board composition, speakers, themes of professional development, and our affinity groups. Fundraisers give donors the opportunity to make a philanthropic investment in an envisioned outcome. Often, they lead the way with their own philanthropy. In Pat's case, she was an early champion, solicitor, and donor to the diversity scholarships of the AFP Foundation for Philanthropy. These scholarships help make the annual AFP conference financially accessible to fundraisers who themselves are underrepresented in the profession and or are employed at organizations serving underserved communities. While those scholarships were initially created for the LGBTQ+ community, the early success of that program enabled that program to become a major scholarship, and it now includes all characteristics of diversity in addition to LGBTQ+. I've had the privilege over the years of meeting many of those scholarship recipients at the International Conference on Fundraising, and it really makes me proud of the work that all of us have done and the work that you, Pat, have done as a founder and donor to that fund. Pat has also made a significant impact on our chapter's financial well-being. As treasurer, she led the board to understand its finances and manage income and expenses in a way that's both financially responsible and socially conscientious. Were it not for Pat, our chapter would be less sophisticated in using its resources, and we would be a laggard in AFP's IDEA work. Instead, AFP Chicago is a leader in AFP's idea work. I am proud to present the AFP Chicago President's Award to our colleague, my friend, Patricia Broughton, CFRE.
Thank you, John, for those kind remarks. And thank you for nominating me for this award and for inviting me to be on the board of AFP Chicago. I'm truly honored and humbled to be here and to receive this award from my peers and colleagues. It's really meaningful to me. When I joined the board of AFP Chicago in 2017, 91% of the board members were white. The first awards luncheon that year, 7 of the 8 nominees were white. And at Development Day Chicago, 2/3 of the speakers were white. So it was clear to me and to many of us that where we needed to focus our diversity and inclusion efforts was around race and ethnicity. Today, the board is close to 40% people of color. At our awards luncheon this year, the room was a delightful rainbow of the diversity that is Chicago, and 2/3 of the awardees were people of color. The executive committee, which had 1 person of color, 1 of 9, that first year I was there, now has 4. And I look around this room and I look at the faces, and I know that the work that we've done in inclusion, diversity, equity, and access has literally changed the face of AFP Chicago. Our incoming president, Ann Grant, is a South Asian woman. Our president-elect, Carlos Trejo, is a Latino man. The progress that we have made is really clear. And I do mean we, because this award belongs to all of us. It belongs to everyone who's made an effort in this arena in the last 6 years, and even preceding that. So my work at AFP Chicago, Carlos Trejo and Crystal Williams had already set the foundation. John extended the invitation to ask the hard questions. My colleagues Tony Martinez and Channing Leonard were the first people to join me in that effort. Because when John invited me to be the champion of diversity, I said, that's not my style. It's not my style to do it as a single person, as a single champion. So the first thing I did was to gather people around me who shared that vision, and Channing and Tony were 2 of those people. So this award belongs to them. It belongs to Ishan Johnson, who always speaks truth to power, who became the AFP vice president, the IDEA vice president when I vacated that office, and who has reminded me and others of us on more than one occasion that white people need to step aside sometime, and sometimes they need to step down to make room for other people. And it also belongs to Aaron Rodgers and to Blair Janis and to Marina, I'm going to mispronounce this, Vilanovic, who co-founded the White Fundraisers Advocating for Racial Equity affinity group with me in January of 2020, at a time when the word white was far more often associated with supremacy than it was with ally. And that group has engaged close to 300 people in the work of advocating for racial equity. I'm very proud of that. So today, this award is a celebration of all of you who've put your time and effort and heart into this effort, who have been committed to, as the late John Lewis said, getting into trouble, good trouble, necessary trouble. I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to be a member of this chapter, which most recently has stood up for a couple of our colleagues of color, has taken on AFP Global, and has spoken out in injustice in that arena. So thank you very much for this. I am dedicating it to all of you.
Hello, everyone. We solved it. Thank you, Larry. I would also, at this time, like to introduce the co-chairs of our 2022 AFP Chicago Fellows Program.
Thanks, Nathan. I'm Joseph Like.
I'm Kimberly Mann.
We're the co-chairs of the Fellows Committee. Several years ago, AFP created the Fellows Program to provide some of our newest colleagues access to AFP thought leaders. Yeah, give you a award. Look at you get an
Award? Do I get an award? Cool.
Thank you. There you go, Chris. And Chris is going to say a few things about his experience as being a fellow for AFP.
All right, I guess I'll do this. Give me 1 second. I got this email. It says, "Congratulations. I am delighted you will be joining us at AFP Icon 2023 as your chapter's Chamberlain Scholar." Cool. So I got the scholarship at 4 o'clock this morning. That's pretty cool. I've been waiting. Okay. First of all, shout out to Deontay and Rosie, my 2023 fellows. It was amazing to deal with this. I have never been a fellow. I've never known what fellowship really meant until this. A lot of you I recognize from our meetings, but since I don't have a lot of time, I don't know what to talk about, so I was like, okay, maybe we could talk about ethical standards that I learned, or how to negotiate salaries, advisory boards, associate boards. We talked about a lot of stuff all year long. LinkedIn profiles and resume building and stuff like that, which is somebody out here, I forgot her name, but I'm going to talk to you about that. And networking, which I'm very bad at. But the one thing that really stuck out for me was creating a personal board of directors. That's something that I really want. That's something that I really need, is a personal board of directors. And I'm thinking, if I had a personal board of directors, I would ask them, the first thing I would ask them is, should I, with this platform that I have, tell everyone, here to go to chicagohomeless.org/marathon team because we're at my organization, Chicago Coalition for the Homeless, we are recruiting for the marathon. And of course, there's a lot of people here that are in the fundraising world and probably doing their own thing. So I don't know, should I be recruiting people at a thing like this? I don't know. I need a personal board of directors to let me know if I should say, hey, everybody, go to chicagohomeless.org/marathon team. Should I do that? I don't know. I don't know if that's a good idea. But that's what I would want to do, or that's what I would ask everyone if I should, go to chicagohomeless.org/marathon team. But again, we'll never know because I don't have a board of directors yet, a personal board of directors yet. So that's just something that I learned at the fellowship, and that's something that I need. Okay. So chicagohomeless.org/marathon team. Did I say that already? Oh yeah, okay, I did. The fellowship program has expanded my knowledge on a multitude of things, and being that I'm very, very new, this is only I think I'm completing my second year in the development world. Being in the fellowship was very insightful for me. So most of us know about the professional development webinars that go on at AFP. Well, I, as a fellow, got to have a lot of one-on-one time after those meetings as a fellow. Some of you I remember you. I remember a lot of you, and wow, it made a difference for me anyway. The best advice that I could give the upcoming 2023 fellows is take notes, add those speakers to your LinkedIn, and then talk to them. I think that's very key. You need to talk to them, don't just add them. And then don't be scared to ask odd questions that may not necessarily be the topic that you're talking about in that particular meeting. But if you have a question, just ask. Lastly, since there's so many people here, I want to kick the conversation off with all of you at the same time. And my mentors back here already know what I'm about to say. Is a hot dog a sandwich? That's it. I'm done. Thank you. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you, Chris, for sharing your experience. It was a pleasure serving with Joe and working with the class of 2022. It is now time to pass the baton to the 2023 class. I would now ask each 2023 fellow to join me at the podium when I call their name and remain until the entire class is recognized. Alex Benjamin, University of Chicago Arts. Casey Caldall, Lift Chicago. Fallon Liba, Gads Hill Center. And Bria Williams from the Chicago Opera Theater. Bevan Joseph from the Greenwood Project is also part of this class. Unfortunately, he is unable to join us this morning. He's at home tending to a sick son. We'd like to congratulate all of you, and we would now like to ask all of our fellow alums in the audience to please stand as well. I have the pleasure of being a fellow from the class of 2017, so I'm honored to stand here with the incoming class. On behalf of everyone at AFP Chicago, congratulations to all of you. We are grateful for your involvement and the opportunity to share this journey with you. And our special thanks goes to Advocate Aurora Health and Women in Development Professions for serving as the program sponsors this year. We could not do this without your support. Thank you.
I also wanted to share special thanks to Kimberly and Joe for their time and commitment to the Fellows Program. You are both inspirations, and we are grateful for your service. Kimberly and Joe will be continuing on as our co-chairs in 2023. Thank you both. And thank you for your commitment. I want to talk about peer mentoring. AFP Chicago has a long-standing and strong commitment to mentoring. You just saw that there. Not only is it an incredible networking opportunity for mentors and proteges, but it is also an ideal way to strengthen Chicagoland's philanthropic community. And today, we'd like to celebrate an excellent program, the Peer Mentoring Program. And to do so, I'd like to invite Christopher Chanson, co-chair of that program, to share a few words.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Vice President of Institutional Advancement at National Louis University. And for my other full-time job, I'm very pleased to co-chair the Peer Mentoring Program with Jennifer Detloff. Delayed reaction there. So I'm very pleased to co-chair the Peer Mentoring Program with Jennifer Detloff, Director of Alumni and Volunteer Engagement at the University of Chicago Medicine and Biological Sciences Development. Jennifer is unable to join us today, but sends her regards to everyone. We'd like to extend our thanks to the generous sponsors of the Peer Mentoring Program, Advocate Aurora Health, Campbell & Company, and Women in Development Professions. We're also very grateful to be supported by a committee of dedicated individuals who share our belief in the power of peer mentoring. Amy Funk, Rochelle Jerry, Barbara Kaloff, Derek Lambert, Susan Machabcheb, Noel Moore, Bill Nally, and Yoshika Weeks. Being a protege or mentor in the Peer Mentoring Program is one of the most important benefits of being a member of our chapter. Whether you're newer to development or more experienced, it's an opportunity to share knowledge and resources, grow connections, and ensure a stronger community of fundraisers. Every year, we match 2 cohorts of early career proteges with more experienced mentors for a year-long partnership to help meet the protege's professional goals. Each pair is also matched with a member of the Peer Mentoring Committee who helps ensure that the partnership progresses smoothly. The Peer Mentoring Committee has introduced some new program elements, including quarterly discussion groups that allow members of the spring and the fall cohorts to connect with each other. Proteges who are more experienced in their careers are now also eligible to participate in the program, and we're now offering twice-yearly reflective practice groups or small group discussions, particularly for those who are new to being mentors. This year, the Peer Mentoring Program connected 19 pairs of proteges and mentors in the fall and spring cohorts. Collectively, our 19 participating mentors have more than 300 years of professional development experience among them. I'll say that again, 300 years of professional experience, which represents an extraordinary wealth of knowledge in the field. Many of our proteges and mentors forge friendships that last a lifetime and that contribute to the close connections that we share as a community. As you think about ways to get involved with the chapter or become further engaged in our work, I'd ask that you keep 2 things in mind, please. First, if you or someone you know would benefit from participating in the program as a protege or mentor, please apply to be part of the Peer Mentoring Program. It's free to participate for chapter members, and it comes with so many valuable benefits. The next application cycle will open early in the new year with a February 17th deadline. And secondly, we'd welcome additional committee members to help us ensure that we're providing a robust program. Please feel free to reach out to Jennifer or me at any time if you'd like to learn more. And finally, we extend our gratitude to all of our program participants, past and current, who have made the Peer Mentoring Program into what it is today. Thank you.
In a moment, we're going to start the educational portion of today's program, and I appreciate everybody's patience getting there. I know we're all excited about that. I also, though, thought what Chris did was really smart. and I think I should probably take a page out of that book. AFP Chicago would not exist without the dedication of our volunteers. They provide countless hours each year building our community and stewarding our many initiatives, and we've seen some of those today. Whether you are a mentor, committee member, co-chair, board member, or if you've given your time and talent to any aspect of our chapter, please stand and be recognized. Yeah, I think that's going to be a lot of you. Yeah, thank you. These volunteers and many more present today bring life to the chapter's many professional and personal engagement opportunities available to you. To continue offering chapter programs and provide you with ongoing network opportunities, we do need your support. There is a QR code on your table. If you could scan that with your phone and consider making a donation in support of AFP Chicago, it would help us to continue these incredible programs we've been hearing about and enhance our efforts to bring new and aspiring fundraisers into our community with training and tools to succeed. So thank you for considering. We are now going to transition to the educational portion of this program, which means I am pleased to introduce Dr. Osili, the Associate Dean for Research and International Programs, Professor of Economics and Philanthropic Studies, and Dean's Fellow, May Family Institute on Diverse Philanthropy at Indiana University Lilly Family School of Philanthropy. Dr. Osili, could you come up to the stage? Yeah. Dr. Osili will lead us on an exploration of the philanthropic landscape in Chicagoland. Please take it away.
Well, good morning, everyone. It is such a delight and a pleasure to be here. I feel like I need to applaud the work of this chapter and celebrate the volunteers, the leaders, the awardees. Thank you. Round of applause. I do agree that this is a model for the rest of the world. When I walked in here, the warmth and enthusiasm with which I was greeted, I chatted with folks, I almost thought, I could go home now. My cup is full. So thank you all for welcoming me so warmly. Bringing you greetings this morning from the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy. I often say that the school is such a wonderful place to work and learn. If you haven't taken, well, let me start. How many people have taken a class at the school? A fundraising school class, some other class? I see. Okay, well, if you haven't, let me just say this is the time. All of us are emerging from COVID. We want to learn. We want to sharpen our skill set. We want to be inspired. So visit the website. The fundraising school offers classes right here in the Chicago area, but you can also take them online. And you will not just learn a lot, but you'll meet a lot of amazing people. So with that, I should say it's also great to be in Chicago. I went to grad school here 5 years at Northwestern. My sister lives in the area. Lots of friends and family, so I feel like I'm coming home in many ways, so thank you. And today I'd like to take you behind the scenes. Over the last 2 or 3 years, our team has been gathering a lot of data, a lot of insight, and I'd like to summarize all of it. I only have 10 minutes. I'm going to have to talk very quickly, but happy to answer any questions that you have. I should also say that I am so inspired. On this trip to Chicago yesterday, I happened to be at the Chicago Fed, and Dr. Lisa Cook, who is the first Black woman to be on the Board of Governors, was there holding a town hall, so I got to say hello to her. And later on during the day, I had a webinar with Luis Miranda, who's the father of Lin-Manuel. So just in one day, I had these amazing experiences. And what was so amazing about the Miranda family is how they have lived their philanthropy. So this is what they do. They've come together as a family to take Hamilton to Puerto Rico. They've organized work around the hurricanes, but also in New York City, providing grants to small businesses and so many other things. So just bringing you that inspiration today. All right, well, let's get started with today's presentation, and let's see. Okay, so one word for the day. How many of you have heard this word before? Philanthrometrics. Anyone? If you have, well, I'd be surprised. We coined this word ourselves at the Lilly Family School, and it takes two concepts that are so powerful. The first one, philanthropy. Many people don't know this, but the word philanthropy means love of mankind, love of humankind. So what we do every day is actually about helping others, supporting others, loving humanity. And when we study philanthropy around the world, we see that every single culture, tradition, region has a tradition of philanthropy. So the word itself dates back to the ancient Greek and Romans, but it's found in every culture. And in fact, there's really no part of the world you can go to where there isn't some practice or culture around philanthropy. The word metrics, however, is newer to the English language. Think about the metric system that wasn't developed till the 1800s. So when you bring philanthropy, the love of mankind, and the idea that we can measure and track what we're doing, this becomes really powerful. So when you leave today, take the heart, the inspiration of philanthropy, but also understand that we can measure and track our work and ultimately see how far we're coming, whether it's working on inclusion and diversity, measuring the impacts we're having in our community, or even tracking how much money, how much volunteering we're doing as a person, as an individual. Okay, so big picture, I'm going to share data from Giving USA 2022, and then also take you behind the scenes to see what else we've learned in the last few years. Now, the first finding, I only have 4 findings because, as I said, I'm going to have to talk fast. So every year when we launch Giving USA, we have literally hundreds of data points from the report, but we have to distill all these findings into usually a top 10 list. So today I've kind of scanned that top 10 list and I've come away with 4 findings. The first one is that the donor landscape is changing. So all of you here, whether you work for a large organization, a small organization, a medium-sized organization, understand that business as usual went out the door. It is no longer the same landscape we had before COVID. How so? Well, let's share the data. The first finding is one that is really grounds for optimism and celebration. Giving reached a new high in the last year, in 2021. We reached $480 billion in American philanthropy. This is great news because many predicted that the pandemic would lead to perhaps a decline in philanthropy. We didn't see that. Some said Americans would pull back on their giving. We also didn't see that. In fact, not only did we see that high, but people of all different backgrounds stepped up and stepped forward in their giving. When we look at the data, there are some big changes, however. First, if you look at the data from the 1980s, or even if you went back, rewind the tape and go back to the 50s and 60s, you'd see that the lion's share of American philanthropy is actually individual donors. But it used to be 80% of donations came from individuals. Today, it's the lowest it's ever been at 67%. So philanthropy is still about individuals of all backgrounds. But increasingly, we're seeing foundations and other types of donors play a big role. Bequests are also expanding. As we look at our aging population in the US and around the world, we expect that segment to grow. And then finally, corporate giving, which is a big piece of philanthropy, is actually 4%. Interestingly, if you look back, it was 5% in the 1980s, and in the 50s and 60s, also 5%. However, underneath that umbrella, we're seeing a lot of change. Corporations are moving to matching dollars and more strategic approaches, we'll hear about that later, to their philanthropy. So despite the idea that it looks very similar, there is significant change taking place. Now, as we look ahead, there are a lot of questions on the horizon. For people like me who track the data every single day, the one word that you keep hearing is, will there be a recession? When, how severe will it be? How will it impact philanthropy? And I'm here to share also good news. Regardless of what the economic data shows, American philanthropy has been resilient, even in tough times. Donors, in some cases, actually, even as we saw in 2020, step up their giving when there's an economic crisis. And as I scan this room, I'm here to encourage you that during the 2008 recession, we saw that organizations that continued to engage donors and were out there building relationships were far better equipped to weather the storm than the organizations that pulled back. In fact, many donors said that they remembered which organizations kept in touch with them during the downturn and maintained their giving to those organizations. And there were some organizations that stopped calling, stopped visiting, stopped engaging, and many of those donors decided to pull back their giving from those organizations. So regardless of the economic news, it is still a good time to build those relationships. The second finding, and one that I think we could spend all day on, is that donor motivations are changing. Here we have excellent data, 2 studies, and after this presentation, if you want to go deeper into any of these, the Philanthropy Panel study is the longest running study of American philanthropy. It covers 10,000 American families of all different backgrounds. I'm so excited about this project because it covers new immigrants to the United States, oversample of African American families, pretty much Native Americans are included, and it's been this way from its inception. In addition, at the school, we've also premiered a study of high net worth giving. How many of you have seen that study? It's in partnership with Bank of America, as well as, well, now U.S. Trust has merged. But we also have an oversample of diverse high net worth donors. And here, this is a great story about diversity and inclusion. When we started the project, we had to make the case for an oversample of diverse high net worth donors. We looked at the landscape and understood that America's changing. High net worth donors come from all different backgrounds. And we had to bring our colleagues along. However, the next time this study was done, they wanted to go deeper in the high net worth domain and even do more samples of diverse donors and oversamples by region. And so finally, we're like, okay, we need to go slowly to get this right. And so my point here is that you may have to bring your partners along when it comes to diversity and inclusion, but pretty soon they will become champions and advocates as well. So what have we learned from this data? Very quickly, from the Philanthropy Panel study, we've learned that giving is by far the most common thing that we do as Americans. More than half of American households over time, in fact, when I joined the Indiana University more than 2 decades ago, I'm going to date myself here, we saw that 2/3 of Americans gave. And over time, this was very consistent. In fact, we even said giving was recession-proof. More Americans give than any other civic activity. More Americans give than vote. More Americans, and it cuts across race, ethnicity. There are no disparities when it comes to giving. All Americans are engaged in giving. However, around the time of the Great Recession, we saw that number, that top-line number decline. And today it sits at 50%. So if I had to issue a call to action to all of us in the audience today, it would be, what would we have to do differently to make sure that giving continues to grow, that it continues to be the strong American tradition? What can all of us do as individuals, in our professional lives, in our work as colleagues? And I'll tell you what we've done as a family, as kind of an inspiration for all of you. Several years ago, we have 2 young children. They're now much older. We asked them on their birthdays to forego birthday gifts and instead pick a charity that their friends could give to. Now, how popular do you think we were as parents when we suggested that? We got a lot of resistance. However, it not only became the way they conducted their birthdays, but their friends started to do it too. And we've even asked on our birthdays, Christmas, just here are the charities we want you to give to. So I encourage you to think about, as the holidays approach, what can you do as a family? We all have too much stuff. In fact, I had that conversation with several people. Your children, grandchildren, young colleagues have far too many toys. This holiday is a good time to pick a charity that they can support. One thing we have learned, though, is although that fraction of Americans who give has declined over time, the dollars have not. We call this donors are down, but dollars are up or holding steady. So both work to do, but also news to celebrate. Those people who are giving are continuing to give, but we need to engage our younger donors. That's the population we're seeing the lower rates among, and individuals who have suffered economic hardship. That's another category. When we turn our attention to the high net worth population, though, it's a very different story. Giving has remained very high. In fact, during the pandemic, we saw rates of giving remained high and the average dollar amount increased by 40%. So very significant increase just in the 2-year period prior to COVID and then during the pandemic. What we also note, and this is probably the most amazing finding, I think, for people who don't know this data, across all the different high net worth groups that we study, giving rates are remarkably high. In fact, there are no statistical differences across the different groups that we study. So you can see whether we're looking at Black, white, Asian, Latino, Hispanic, LGBTQ, we have high rates of giving for all the groups that we study. According to one of my colleagues at Indiana University, actually the former president of the IU Foundation, when he looked at this data, he told me this is the business case for diversity, equity, and inclusion. If you don't think it's the right thing to do, you may not want to do it, but if you look at this data, it's pretty compelling that by not focusing on diverse donors, you're missing a big part of the work out there and opportunities out there. Okay. Now, in addition to growing giving, we also see during the pandemic that donors are increasingly using new vehicles and new approaches and are willing to experiment with more unrestricted gifts. We saw McKinsey Scott in 2020 made a total of $6 billion in gifts. Many of those gifts, in fact, all of them that I know about, were completely unrestricted. The president of Howard University, we had a program with him at the Lilly Family School, received a call where he was told on that call that Howard would be receiving $40 million. That was the largest gift to date that the university had received, and it was completely unrestricted. No restrictions. So we're seeing a lot more donors. I am on a board of a family foundation, and during the pandemic, we created more flexible grants, more unrestricted support. And so my message to all of you, especially those of you who are in small organizations, this is the time to ask for that unrestricted support if that's what you need, and talk to your donors about how that can help you with innovation, with the flexibility. And the pandemic actually offers you this new, I'd say, unprecedented opportunity to tell that story, how unrestricted giving can actually move the needle on your mission, on the issues that you're working on. Okay, so here is also another place where we have been tracking. Corporate giving has remained, actually, has fallen over time, and it's close to 1%, you could say, of corporate pre-tax profits. And during this time, COVID, the racial justice movement, and many of the challenges we faced, we've seen corporations also step up. But not all of that is in the corporate philanthropy bucket. Companies are pursuing partnerships, marketing partnerships, cause marketing, and event sponsorships. A lot of those partnerships are not necessarily in the philanthropy bucket. So my message here is, as you talk to your corporate donors, think about all the different ways that they can support you. It could be through the matching, engaging employees and matching dollars and doers. It could be through sponsorships. It could be through in-kind donations. But not all of it is the traditional philanthropy bucket. All right, now as we think about 2020 and beyond, one moment that stays with me was the summer of 2020, where we saw Americans of all different backgrounds express, raise their hands, raise their voices, but also donate to support racial equity and social justice. At the school, we actually measured how many people were giving to these causes and found that nearly 20%, maybe even 30% of Americans contributed to racial equity. Some of that was giving to organizations, some of that was supporting individuals, some of that was also supporting grassroots organizations. So if you work for a small organization, this is your moment. People are willing to give to those causes. And among high net worth donors, 25% of them gave specifically to racial equity and social justice. So as I slowly try to wrap up, I'll end with the last point. The last finding is one that actually is very exciting. As we think about what 2020 has done, it's been an acceleration of some existing trends. One of those trends is technology and fundraising. Now, I tend to be an optimist, in case you haven't picked that up yet. And what we've seen is that technology is really providing new opportunities for organizations. The CDC Foundation had no individual donors prior to COVID. In March 2020, they launched their first ever crowdfunding campaign and raised $40 million just in 1 month. Now, you could say, well, CDC Foundation, everyone was paying attention to them, but I did ask the leadership and the team, what made you, what allowed you, what gave you the courage to try this thing you've never done before? And they said, well, it was a pandemic. Things were different. We realized we had to do something new, and we weren't afraid. So here, I guess the message for all of us is be willing to experiment, willing to try new things. Just because you haven't done it before doesn't mean you won't be successful. And we're finding, as we look at the data, some really, I'd say, very different results. In particular, prior to COVID, this was the picture we saw. Online giving was growing, but it was under 10% of all giving. And in fact, this was a very surprising finding. I spoke to the Young Presidents Association here in Chicago, and of all the things I presented, this was the finding that really tripped them up. They said, online giving, this is a big deal. Why is it under 10%? Well, COVID changed that. As we look at the numbers in 2020, we had this inflection point where online giving reached almost 13% of all giving. And we're seeing nonprofits use technology in creative ways. Some are launching crowdfunding campaigns. Some are conducting virtual events, virtual volunteering. And I urge all of you in this room to really think about how can we use technology to reach new donors, but also to engage our current donors. And here, be willing to unlearn some of your prior assumptions. One assumption we hear a lot from organizations is online technology is only for young donors. Well, when it comes to COVID, we're seeing a lot of older Americans use technology because they may be less willing to engage in in-person events at this point. And I always tell people that when I joined Instagram, I was late to the party. Guess who was on Instagram before me? My dad, who just turned 80 years old. He was on Instagram well before me, had an established presence. So older donors are also online, and we should not dismiss that population. As we look ahead, I just want to emphasize that this is a time of great opportunity. All the data we've collected, all the information we've gathered, thousands of data points show that Americans at this moment are more willing than ever to commit to the causes that matter to them. Many people in this era want to make a difference and want their dollars to be used in a way that will move the needle. We're also seeing nonprofits step up in their creativity, their resilience, and their experimentation. Don't be left out of this game. As you leave this place, think about how you can embrace some of these new opportunities. Realize that despite all the uncertainty of our time, this is probably an unprecedented moment where Americans of all backgrounds, of all income groups, are really actually looking for ways to give and to make a difference. And technology is going to play a key role in bringing that sense of community in these difficult times. So I just want to end by saying that one thing that was very encouraging about the program this morning is it really helped all of us to think more broadly about how we can show up in our communities. Of course, as individuals, as colleagues, how do we donate our financial resources, our time, but also how do we use our networks and how do we use our voice to support the causes that really matter. As we think about 2020, Jamie Dimon, who is the president of CEO of JP Morgan Chase, he said the most important thing that he can do for a nonprofit is not to write a check. And of course, everyone kept quiet when he said that. Why not? He said the most important thing I can do is actually open my network to the causes that I'm supporting. And many nonprofits said to him, well, you can do both. Share your network and write a check. But I encourage you, as you talk to donors, let them know we need all of your network to show up as well. I call this all-in giving. Donors today are interested in not just writing a check, but they want to bring all their resources, their talents, and their networks to the work that they're doing. So I'll end here by just saying thank you to the AFP chapter for hosting us. Make sure you visit the school website for the research, for the fundraising school, for the classes. And I just also want to thank all of you for creating this fantastic, inclusive, and inspiring community that you've created. So I'll stop here and we'll move it right along to the panel.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Dr. Osili. That was fantastic. One more round of applause for Dr. Osili, please. Thank you. I am pleased to introduce our special guest for today's discussion, and if you can come up and join me and take your seats, Kendra Davenport, Suki McClatchy, Brandon Davis, and Hillary Ward. I'll come on up. And while they're coming up, I'll give you some context for who these fine people are. Kendra Davenport is the president and CEO of Easter Seals. She will be sharing the story of Easter Seals and Abbott's work together with Suki McClatchy, Director Global Citizenship at Abbott. Brandon Davis is the Senior Director of Brand Strategy and Marketing at YMCA of Metropolitan Chicago. He and Hillary Ward, Global Impact Director, Community Impact and Philanthropy at McDonald's, will be sharing more information about their collaboration. Dr. Osili will serve as a moderator for this discussion, and all panelists are members of our community who will share stories of their philanthropic partnerships and how their collaborations extend beyond financial support, striving to build relationships between organizations and their people. You will also find notepads on your table. If you have a question for the panelists, jot those down, and they'll be collected towards the end of the program. Without further ado, Dr. Osili.
Okay, well, this is the moment you've all been waiting for. I have had the pleasure of chatting with these individuals, both on Zoom and in person, and I promise you, you are going to be not just informed, but inspired and motivated to finish the year strong. So I'm excited about this conversation. So first of all, I'm going to ask all of them, I asked them to be vulnerable today, to share really their own experiences. But one thing that really stood out as we thought about the theme is relationships matter, perhaps more than anything when it comes to philanthropy. But also, when we think about relationships, you're only one step removed from the goal, whatever that goal is. One person removed, one connection removed. And we talked about 6 degrees of philanthropy, of relationships. And as I look around the room, how many of you have been to McDonald's in the past year? Okay, eaten some fries. Maybe your kids have had some fries. If you haven't, yes. YMCA, many of us use the services. We go to the gym. We drop our kids off at the childcare. Raise your hand if you have been to a YMCA or used one of their services. Nearly everyone here. And then when it comes to Abbott, we've all been touched by programs that Abbott funds in this community. We've also used many of the medications. Raise your hand if you've had contact with Abbott. And then finally, Easter Seals works on so many of the issues that matter here in Chicago and beyond, including homelessness. And as we think about basic needs charities, Kendra is going to be bringing it home in terms of that. So we're going to kick it off with Suki and Kendra actually talking about the relationships that they have and how they first met and the partnership they've built. But before we do that, I thought maybe the two of them could just say quickly about how relationships have informed their own work in the field.
That the theme today is 6 degrees of philanthropy because in truth, Suki and I go way back. We've known one another for almost 20 years. That's better. Yay! So we met when I was at a former employer, Project Hope, and Abbott was funding us there. So when I started with Easter Seals in April, it was a pleasure to know that Abbott had agreed to fund our Black Child Fund, which addresses disparities in health care among Black children with autism and disabilities. Those disparities were widened during the pandemic. So in 2020, we launched the Black Child Fund, and Abbott was the first funder of that.
It's also not lost on me that we came to know Abbott, Easter Seals that is, came to know Abbott at a development forum, a fundraising forum. So these meetings are important, and you should access the people who are on this stage, reach out, as I think one of our speakers said, and talk to us, LinkedIn or via email. I will just say before I turn it to Suki that maintaining relationships, now I had nothing to do with Abbott's engagement with Easter Seals. We're very proud to be a part of them, but I know Suki will agree that throughout your career, and I've been in development, marketing, communications, nonprofit for more than 30 years, it is a very small world, and the relationship Suki and I have, and which is I think 17 or 18 years in duration, is indicative of relationships I think that we build because paths cross, and when people stay in their field as long as Suki has and as long as I have, you're bound to cross paths again. I will just say one more thing. It was also nice to know when I arrived that Abbott had re-upped their support and that they're supporting our Peach Project, which is a project on education and community health equity, again, for children of color. So Abbott's commitment is very strong. We're super excited to be partnering with them, and I think their commitment and the depth of their commitment is evident, but I'll turn it over to Suki and let her talk more about it.
Thanks so much, and thanks to AFP for this opportunity, and Una and the rest of the speakers today. Well, I feel like I feel like Kendra, really, did a great job in sort of talking about sort of the relationships between our organizations. I've been with Abbott for over 20 years now. And I've been able to work with some, really amazing organizations, both, global and local. And there's just so many, great, qualities and things that are so important, in organizations of all different sizes. And it's kind of like a courtship. I think about working with partners as sort of a courtship, right? It's it's very rare that we would just sort of introduce ourselves or have an organization introduce themselves to us, and that we automatically are going to make an investment. And so I think in terms of how we worked with Easter Seals, yes, this has been it had been probably a year prior. It was sort of a chance meeting at one of these kinds of gatherings. And then, it was keeping in touch. It was kind of understanding kind of what's the direction, kind of keeping in touch over time to really understand what the strategic goals are for each of the different organizations. And then, then it's sort of a moment in time when everything kind of comes together and, it makes sense, right? It's where we were really trying to at that point in 2020 really trying to figure out how do we address these health inequities as a healthcare company. That's really our lens is around how do we increase access for people. So I think that's this has been something that then again as Kendra mentioned, then after we did help launch with the Black Child Fund, is that as we got to know each other over time, we said, look, we want to be doing something more. What are you trying to achieve? What do we want to achieve? And so it really worked out very well.
I couldn't agree more with Suki in that I think these relationships take time to build, and spending as long as I have in a fundraising capacity, one of the things that is very apparent and something I've understood for many years now is that there is no silver bullet. You all understand that. It's very, very rare when an NGO is approached by a corporation with a grant or to develop a partnership. And if they are, oftentimes that tends to be a one-off, I find. You're satisfying a need they have immediately. Building relationships organically and not necessarily going in for an ask, but really considering how you can help that company? How can you help them if they're breaking into an emerging market and you happen to have a presence there? Easter Seals is fortunate in that we have 70 affiliates across the country. We have 32,000 staff who work for them, and service lines that all of them promote and manage are very, very diverse. So there's a lot we can ask for. There's a lot of ways we can engage corporations, be it employee engagement or cause-related marketing. Someone else mentioned that. And I think that's really taken a new twist and has moved up, if you will, on the agenda for corporations in terms of how they give and what they give, because it's not as heavy a lift. I think the days, honestly, and I'll let Suki, I don't want to speak for her, but I think the days of corporations just stroking a check are behind us. Corporations like Abbott want, I feel, to develop a long relationship where the NGO can benefit them, and it's really a mutually beneficial relationship. It's not a quid pro quo. And I think we went through a time in the 80s where corporations were all about just checking that CSR box. I find now that most companies we work with, and that I've worked with even in the past decade, want much more than that. They want their work to have meaning, and they want their nonprofit partners to help them engage in new and unique ways, and help their employee base engage in new and different ways. So.
Well, you have heard quite a lot about partnerships already. I'm just going to lift up 2 points before we turn it over to Brandon and Hillary. So this is a long game. I think you've all heard this. You all know this intuitively, but there's also a learning and a listening component to building relationships. And as you can see, doing your homework ahead of time to understand what those strategic priorities are and how you can work closely with corporate partners. So thank you to both Kendra and Suki for sharing the behind the scenes. We're now going to turn our attention to Hillary and Brandon, who've also worked together to develop another unique partnership. As you've heard, both Brandon and Hillary have come to this. Hillary has worked with a lot of nonprofits and worked in nonprofits herself. So tell us from your perspective, what makes for that strong, sustained, and authentic relationship with partners?
Yeah, well, you touched on a lot of really good, can you hear me? Good, okay. You touched on a lot of really good points around how corporations are thinking differently about how we show up in community. And McDonald's is a company that is literally in every community. We're everywhere. And so for us, as a company, we know we have a responsibility to show up differently. And what is really unique about this partnership that we have with the Y, it's been long-standing. We've had different ways that we've worked with the Y through volunteerism, and we've had board engagement. But we really wanted to make sure that we were being strategic in this relationship and not just writing that check. We wanted to figure out all the different ways that we can partner with an organization. How can we leverage our resources to support the communities, and what are some of the organizations that are doing that strategically and who understand our business? I think if you're going to partner with a company, you have to understand the business needs, what our consumers want, how we market ourselves, so we can figure out how to best leverage our resources. And, you know, my background is in fundraising. I crossed to the dark side about 5 years ago, I joke, but I always did corporate partnerships because I just had a love of taking corporate dollars and using it for good, and coming up with cause campaigns and seeing the similarities between nonprofits and the value that nonprofits bring to corporations. And so I think if a nonprofit can see the value they bring and bring to the conversation, the company will listen. And corporations are looking at you already. If you don't know that, I know lots of times nonprofits want to submit unsolicited requests, but we're already doing our research and looking and targeting organizations. And with the Y, we already had this long-standing relationship, but this year when we decided to launch a new grant campaign really focused on Chicago. Our work is global, but we wanted to make sure that we were targeting Chicago and addressing the critical needs that we're seeing in the city, particularly around our young people, that opportunity youth demographic. The Y was at the top of the list when we were looking at organizations that we can partner with, given their work in the community and their violence prevention programs, which we funded. So it just made sense. So we saw that similarity, and I'll be a little bit honest. I used to work for the Y. Actually, I worked for Y USA, so I knew firsthand just the impact that the Y has had, not just here in Chicago, but around the world. So it was kind of a little bit of a brainchild of mine to make sure that when we were looking at these organizations, the Y was there and partnering with organizations big and small that had community partnerships, that had large reach and understood how we function as a company. You want to add to that?
Yeah. I would just add, I think as we look at, and we've talked about this already, the relationships are so important, and being able to continue those and think about what does a relationship look like differently as we move forward. And at the same time, we have a model that we use at the Y that I was showing Hillary earlier, and it really... No, I was also pitching her, yeah, don't get me wrong. I was also thinking about, we look at the intersection of value co-creation, relationship, and impact. And we often look at those as a Venn diagram and saying in the very center of that is the optimization for rich solutions for all of us. Whether you're a nonprofit, whether you're a corporation, doesn't matter. And what we say is we want to take that Venn diagram, and rather than keeping it in the traditional Venn diagram that we think of, you want to overlay all three of those and turn it, and you have these basically this optimized rich solution that literally it all falls together. And so when we think about that, it's not your traditional gala dinner and volunteer opportunities. It is those, but it can be so much more. We think about things like ways to engage in our business processes. We are talking, I'll step away from McDonald's for a second and say, we're talking with Discover. Discover has a great new call center that they opened in the Chatham community. We have a call center. We can do better in that space, so let's learn from each other. We have a diverse, because we work across the region, we have such a diverse vendor population that we're working with so intimately. Organizations are coming to us to say, help us with our procurement and diverse suppliers. We can do that, right? These are the things that we don't typically think of, but here's how you actually really deepen these relationships. Oh, and then to say, back to McDonald's, you all ran camp last year, a virtual camp. We run 5 overnight camps and a lot of day camps. How about we partner on a cause marketing effort and do this? And it's those types of innovations, and I was saying earlier, innovation is strategy, strategy is innovation. Let's not get confused here. Let's not overthink what innovation can be. Put out those ideas and do them. But being able to then say, yes, let's go forward, let's do these things, and adjust your teams as you need to be able to move forward and listen to what the marketplace needs.
That is fantastic. So get started is what I'm hearing from Brandon. Don't wait. If you have some ideas, if you have a sense of how some corporate partners can help you, this is the time to get started. Don't wait till next year or the year after. Many companies are actually looking for these opportunities to build relationships in communities, and you as a nonprofit have those. So that gets us to the other big theme, which captivated our interest at our table this morning, trust. Donors give to organizations they trust. Corporate funders, foundations want to find organizations and leaders that they can trust. But that progress happens at the speed of trust. So without trust, you can't make the progress, you can't get those transformational gifts. And that leads us with one question. How do we build the trust with the funders? What are those critical ingredients? And I think all of our panelists can give us that winning formula. So I'm going to have Brandon start because he's clearly figured it out. And we can all learn from him. We don't have to do the heavy lifting. We can just learn from Brandon today. So Brandon, over to you.
Let's see what we can do here. So I think a lot of this is all about authenticity of who we are and being very open and transparent about that. I was thinking about this, and incoming president Ann Grant, I used to work with her. I was on the dark side before and then went to the bright side. And I was in the very sexy industry of insurance. When I worked with the Adler Planetarium, it was great because Ann and I would get together and we'd talk, and we built a relationship that just very organically grew. And Ann would say, what do you think about this thing? And I'd be like, that's not for us. It's just not, right? And we have to be very transparent with these types of things. Ann would come to me and say, I have a question for you as my donor partner. I've got this entire packet that my team thinks we need to give out. Tell me what you actually want from this. And being able to look at that, because we all know we don't need more paper in our lives. And we also don't need more words and marketing to do more work for us too. So there's also my pitch to everyone, less paper is more. But looking at these types of things, just being able to have those open and honest conversations and really getting to know, and I said to Anne, this is what I'm looking for, but you need to ask this to your other partners too. It's not just me, it's one person. Have that trust and relationship with each other and see what they need, and do that moving forward. And I think as we build those relationships, you build that trust, you keep coming back. And I think what's also great is you continue to know these people. So even though I've stepped away from the sexy industry of insurance and now I'm at the Y, I'm still in touch with Anne, and I'm saying to our team now, we can partner with the Adler. We can continue doing these things, and it doesn't have to just be through the financial ways. It can be all these other things too. And that's what those relationships continue to build and continue to do, is allow us to keep connecting, because at the end of the day, it's all about people, the human experience, the things that we're doing.
And to add to that too, the trust and communication and transparency is so important. I've been on conversations with some of our partners, and in the beginning they're excited, they want to partner, they want to promise to do all these things, and then halfway through they can't deliver. We don't want that. We want our nonprofit partners to be successful. So at the gate, we say literally, what can you do and how can we help you? If this isn't going to be done in 12 months, it's okay. We're not going to take the money back. We're not the big bad funder anymore. We're a partner here. We want you to be successful. So we really encourage our partners to let us know. We have regular check-ins, but let us know when they can't meet a deliverable, how we can help them meet that deliverable. We may be able to provide some pro bono services with our legal team or some marketing resources. How can we help you meet our goals? If we can't, we can always revisit. So I think that's how we build trust, because if we know you can meet those deliverables or make changes and pivot when you have to, because as a company, we pivot and change all the time, it's going to help us make a strong case next year when we have to go to our leadership and ask for more money for this organization. If we know we have an initiative coming up and this organization ties into that, we know they can deliver, we know they'll be transparent, and we'll have those honest conversations.
So I have heard transparency, accountability, authenticity, and being very open about what you can and cannot do. If this is not going to work, also be upfront about that. Funders, I think, more than ever, are willing to have that conversation. And so do not be afraid, once again, to go there if that's the case. Suki, you've worked with nonprofits here in Chicago, but also around the world. What helps build trust? And how can all of us show up in a way that is authentic?
Sure. So I would say I completely agree with what both Hillary and Brandon just shared. I think for me, I think about sort of when we first have those discussions, and I think trust is also then around sort of wanting to grow together. We probably rarely do not just go to an organization and say, we love what you're doing, just continue it on, and here we go, right? We go we look at organizations and we think, yes, they're doing really interesting things. I wonder if they, might want to try and do something. Maybe we can help them either expand or look at something differently or test a model or do something innovative. So I think part will also be wanting to sort of explore, test new things with us. And I think then that's where a relationship can also grow and bud, and then and then we know that we're sort of in this together and not just for us or just for them, but really wanting to be a true partner and ally with us.
Completely concur with my three colleagues, and building on what Suki just said, I think too often, and I know I've been guilty of this in my career, as we get into our nonprofit mindset and think this is what we need, and they can give it to us. They can give it to us because this is the charter of their foundation. This falls within the sweet spot, and we forget that corporation has needs, and KPIs and goals that they want to establish. So really encourage you, when you are embarking on a partnership with a new or even a traditional funder, someone who's funded you before, think about what's going to drive their business. Think about it more in a proprietary sense, in less of a, we're a nonprofit, please help us, and more, as my colleagues were saying, and Suki especially, as a partnership. You know, how can we help you? Is it through social media? I also think nonprofits discount what they bring to the table. Your presence, you know, the Y and Easter Seals share a long-standing tradition, and we permeate virtually every state in the union. We are a good partner when you're working with a national corporation. So just to put yourself in that mindset and really think how the partnership can, again, be mutually beneficial, not one-sided.
I want to add just one thing that came to mind as you were saying those great things, which is for anyone who is in a nonprofit or works with a nonprofit, remember these words. Nonprofit is a tax status, not a business model. Move away from that notion, the charity mindset, and turn to being a social enterprise. You are a business too. We are here to also make money, to have that value co-creation. Nonprofit is a tax status, not a business model.
Oh, yeah. I just want to lift up some themes from what we've heard so far around trust. So starting with Kendra, do not discount what you bring to the table. So part of authenticity is being clear about your own value as an organization, as a leader, and having those value-based conversations. This is what we can bring, as well as what the organization can bring. We also heard from Suki about co-production. We're working together, we're partners, and being very transparent about what you can do and also what you can't do. Similarly, I think Hillary's perspective is priceless because she's been on both sides. She has worked in a nonprofit, she's now in the funding realm. And so I would encourage all of us, as we think about building partnerships of all different types with donors, with funders, with corporations, to really listen and learn and be open to doing things differently. And then finally with Brandon, I think he gave us the hashtag for this afternoon. Nonprofit is a tax designation. And this is the time where really the boundaries of philanthropy are expanding. We're hearing more about impact investing. We're hearing different tools, vehicles being used. And this is not just in Chicago, this is around the world. So if you have an idea, this is the time to test it out. Many funders are going to be willing to invest, and that's the word, in innovation if it can drive results on both sides. So as we look ahead, we are nearing the end of the year. This is a really busy time for anyone who's in philanthropy. This is the giving season. As I mentioned, many are in a position to write checks. The pandemic hasn't necessarily affected them in a negative way, but there are people that are still struggling, and that means the work of Easter Seals, the Y, and so many organizations is very challenging. So as you look out, I'm going to ask our panel to really tell us what keeps them motivated, hopeful, and optimistic during this time of uncertainty, but also of a lot of opportunity. So let's start with Kendra.
I think opportunity comes via creativity. And again, I challenge everyone in this room to think more creatively about how their organization functions and about opportunities you can access. As a new CEO coming into a vaunted older nonprofit, there is very little that Easter Seals hasn't already done. So, you know, I will say the beauty of the team that I work with, though, is that they don't fall back on, oh, we've done that before. I rarely hear that. What I hear is, we've done this, how could we improve it? How could we do it differently? How can we engage a new partner? Look at what this NGO is doing successfully. We could do something similar. I think the more creative you are, the more open you are, and the more flexible. That's another thing I will just say is, again, I think nonprofits were all under such pressure to raise the money, to fill our cup, to check the boxes, that we overlook things that are right in front of us that could be so beneficial. We also tend to think if a corporation isn't able to give money, and they say no to a request, that we shut the door and we move on. Absolutely not. There have been countless times in my long career where I have kept that door open, and no, as a former mentor of mine used to say, is not no. It's, in fact, it's never no. It's just not right now. And the number of times companies have come back or our paths have crossed again and we've been able to do something differently with them than what was originally, the nonprofits thought of how we should work with them has worked out beautifully. So I think the more creative you are, the more open you are and to opportunity, the more it manifests itself. And then I'll just say one last thing. I have a child who's very ethereal, and she often tells me and reminds me, Mom, you have to manifest it for it to happen. Okay. And I think, okay, so I am working on Ailish's advice, and every morning I get up and do my affirmations also under her advice. And I really have started to see things her way and believe that if you manifest it, you can manufacture it. You can make it happen. So positivity and optimism play a large role in bringing about new opportunity.
That's great. Love that. So I would say what keeps me optimistic, because clearly there are now, it seems more than ever, huge challenges ahead of us. And, it really then is, we can't, it's not business as usual. We can't just keep, we're not going to be able to, to spend our way or do any, out of the challenges. We really all are going to have to do our part to overcome these challenges. So I think what's very what I feel very optimistic about is, I would say, all of you. I really do feel that, now more than ever, we've got to go and, and find those partnerships, find those organizations, both at the local level, at the national level, at the global level, because some of these things are going to be more localized. We work with organizations, in California, in Stockton, California, where where we rely on, we're not working with, national or, our other, we are working with those local grassroots organizations who know these communities, who are trusted in these communities, and they have, at their core, things that are aligned with what we are trying to accomplish and are very flexible. They may not have, maybe they don't have all of the technical capabilities or, the capacity, but that's where then we can say, we can help you with that. We can bring in some technical expertise, or we can, provide, product, or we can, do other, other things. We can, network. We can, we can connect them with some of these right people. And then there are the nationals where, we need to go big, where we've got to say, we've got to create something new. There's got to be something that can be then scaled up so that it can reach the maximum numbers of people. So I just feel like there's just so much there's so much commitment, so much passion, so much, capability, that it's going to really take all of us.
I think for me, what I am motivated by is seeing just this change in diversity and philanthropy. I've been doing this for about 20 years, and I remember being in rooms like this and being the only person of color in the room, and I definitely didn't have a panelist position. There wasn't a lot of diversity there, and I'm seeing this change in landscape, especially in corporate social responsibility, or ESG, sustainability now, where we're seeing diversity of thought and background coming to the table to have these conversations. It's not just the same people working in these jobs. They're looking at people that come from the nonprofit space, government, academia, bringing them in to bring that perspective to help them work with our nonprofit partners. So that diversity landscape is changing, and seeing some of the data that you shared was really inspiring. There's a lot more work that needs to be done, obviously, but seeing how we're not only making sure we have the talent at the table having these conversations on both sides of philanthropy, but we're also ensuring that we are directing our dollars to diverse organizations, especially knowing that so many communities, specifically Black and brown communities, often don't get the resources that they need. They often, especially if they're serving or being led by Black and brown individuals, they don't get that funding. And so being honest and transparent in those conversations and bringing that diversity of thought is motivating for me, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that changes for the better going forward.
Fantastic. So Brandon, you will give us the last word. I think we're almost out of time here.
Terrific. I think there's a few things that keep me motivated, excited to round out the year. The first is not having to wear a button down again, like today. I think I have only worn them 3 times this year, so I am all in for the wide tracksuit now. I think the second thing is just the work that we do at the end of the day, and being able to know that we are helping someone have a place to rest their head at night, since we do housing, a place that with McDonald's, our youth safety violence prevention, that we're providing that trauma-informed care that the communities and these youth need. The ability to be able to go and find their next swim or fitness routine that they need. All of these things are helping us. And for us at the Y right now, especially for me as the head of marketing, is just this new brand that we're launching. So everyone will see that very, very soon. It revolves around the power of play, and all of us can play. And we need to remember that in our lives, because there's science behind that. So we're excited about that. And I think the third thing is just continuing to meet so many people, the folks in this room. As I think it was Chris who was up here earlier and speaking, I said I want him as a spokesperson for me. So I'm coming to find you after this, because we have a great new campaign launching, and you'd be great for that. And I think that's the power of the work that we're doing, the relationships. We may not know someone right away, but within a few minutes, we really do know someone, and that's that. Those degrees of separation.
Wonderful. Well, let's give this panel, this amazing panel, a round of applause. And I just want to reinforce that we have so many reasons to be optimistic today. When we look at data, once again, on trust in our country, many institutions are not trusted. Government trust is at an all-time low. The highest institutional trust is around nonprofits. So all of you have a role to play in continuing that leadership, in showing up in authentic ways, and also in building the type of world that we all want to live in. So let's go out there, finish the year strong, and continue the excellent, amazing work that you're all doing. Thank you to our panel.
Panelists, if you wouldn't mind staying on for one moment longer. We do have a couple of audience questions. We're not going to do a ton because we're running short on time, but the questions were really good, and I'm going to pull out a couple of my favorites. I am not going to pull out my actual favorite question, which is, how can a fundraiser find out if there are employees at Abbott that run marathons? I think we know who submitted that question. One of the recurring themes that came through in the questions here, and I'll do this as sort of our question, and I'll break it into 2 parts. And I'll ask both so you can think about these 2. One is, what are you looking for in a first approach from a nonprofit that would help them stand out from their peers and help you understand exactly why they would be a good fit? And obviously that is for Suki and Hillary. And then also, adjacent to that, what can small shops, especially small one-person shops, do to help build that trust even when their time is so divided? And I'll do this like a toss-up, so if there's anybody there who has an immediate reaction to that, feel free to grab it.
I think, okay, good. So the first question was around that first approach, that initial conversation with nonprofits. I think, first of all, if we're at that stage that we have a call, that's a good sign, first of all. So first and foremost, you're there. We have a call, I'm listening. So I want to treat that conversation not as this full-on pitch where you're giving me 25 slides. I want to have a conversation. I want to understand, just talk to me person to person. What are the pressing needs that your organization is addressing, and where are there some gaps, and how can we as a company leverage our resources? I really want to just have a conversation. I think we're changing the way that we're doing these partnerships. It's not just about pitching a deck with levels and benefits and all of that. It's really about a discussion, and I really want to brainstorm, and I want to hear some of these ideas. And so I think I always approach those conversations, just casual conversations around how we can best partner together. What are some of the needs? And I expect that folks have done their research, and they already know what we do, how we fund, but also may understand what some of our gaps are as a business and where they might be able to help us. You talked about social media, and again, as a business, when we think about partnerships, I think about partnering with organizations that have reach in the community, because those sites like the Y, they're going to get on social media, they're going to post things, they're going to talk about our partnership. So we look at how you're engaging, and so if you understand that that's a need for our company, and you see how we are marketing, come to that conversation with have done your homework, and you can pepper in some of those things, but really treat it as a conversation, not as a full-on pitch meeting.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. I think to my point earlier, is that, we want to get to know anyone that we're going to ultimately partner with, and that takes time. So because we're looking at, we don't look at them as sort of a one-off types of things. When we're looking at building relationships, it really is about building a relationship. And so we have to think about that as sort of as a long-term type of thing versus just sort of a one-off type of thing. I think one of the things that, I personally, I find that there are times where organizations will say, we do STEM, you guys do STEM, it's perfect perfect. And quite frankly, that's not really, what we're looking for. It's first to just kind of learn and have done the homework in terms of, we know you've got these programs. Here are some ideas maybe that we could, so it's not only just sort of us sort of saying, well, this is our strategy and this is what, we're looking to do. But for them to say, we're interested in STEM, these are things that we're doing, but we'd like to do X, Y, and Z, so there might be an opportunity, let's just, have that conversation. So, I think that's how we look at it, as more of that, let's get to know each other, and have more than one discussion.
Yeah, that's perfect. I really appreciate that. In regards to the small shops, and the way they might approach, are there different considerations you take into account when you're meeting with those very small organizations?
I would just say, we work with all different types of organizations, right? And I think part of it, again, we look at it as, what can we bring to the table for you? So it may not be the same approach for every type of organization that comes to us. There might be some smaller opportunities, or we can introduce them to folks. We do that all the time. We've done that. I remember in Rwanda, where we do work where we said, they were relatively small, and we said, we love what you're doing. You're being innovative. It's social enterprise. You're employing women, all the things that we love. But we can't be your only funder. And so, we then said, we know all these other organizations and that are large, that are ingrained in there. They can help you, introduce you to other people, to the ministries of health, to some nutrition folks, and et cetera. So I think, again, it's really just sort of what the needs are, and how can we help in in different way.
I would agree to that, and to piggyback, I think for the smaller shops, not being afraid to ask for capacity building or general operating support. Again, I think some of the data talked about that, and McDonald's, we're not just giving away program grants, we're giving away gen op support, because we know how important that is to sustainability of organizations, especially smaller organizations. So I would encourage the smaller ones to not be afraid to say, we just need Gen Op grants to help us just get off the ground, or to support our staff. We will consider that, and not being and not ask for a lot of data reporting on those Gen Op grants. We know that's also a challenge as well.
That's a great point. And I love, Suki, you made a callback to the opening the networks that Dr. Osili talked about earlier. That's a really great connective tissue there. Real quick, before we wrap up, I want to hear from Kendra and Brandon about your time working in development, if there are ways that you've seen small shops approach very successfully with corporations.
Yeah, I think one of the things that, as we heard too, is, and thinking about just the why, is work with another nonprofit, work with us. We have the relationships. We recognize, we're fortunate to be the organization we are and have the connections we have, and the reach that we have. And so, yes, it could be going into a McDonald's, but it can also be us going in with you and taking you to McDonald's and introducing you, or us going, wait a second, we want to work with you. And you're not thinking about us as a partner when in fact we are absolutely a partner. We're doing that with an organization called Alchemy right now, and their focus is, they're a digital app that is focused on health and well-being, and specifically a lot around mental and spiritual for the African American community. And so we're starting to do a lot of work with them and cause marketing and raising their profile with a lot of these other organizations. So I think we're also a good foray into the world that is.
Completely agree with Brandon, and think that failure to overlook opportunities to collaborate with other nonprofits is a failure, right? Often I think we get in this mindset that we have to be out front, we have to be in the lead, we need to be able to get the maximum dollars from that initiative to make it worth our time, when in actuality, I think many funders that we work with, that I've worked in the past, really appreciate collaborative approaches, because then it's not like they have skin in the game with just one NGO, but they're killing two birds with one stone. I would also say, so I totally agree with Brandon on that. I would also say that I think, again, when you're wearing 5 different hats and there are never enough hours in the day and you're trying to bring in that money, what gets overlooked is your brand and your marketing. And you might say, well, we don't have brand and marketing. I'm doing all of that. Right. But the digital world has created opportunities for all of us to be more present online, to engage more people. So if you just, and I'm all about the aggregation of marginal gains. James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, is something I've shared with my team. We did it in book club. Baby steps add up over time. So over time, if you just make a goal, I'm going to create one post about what we're doing and post it every week. I'm going to respond to 1 to 10 other posts and say, we like what you're doing, and my organization is doing this, and we'd love to partner or talk or collaborate. It might not yield something overnight, but at a minimum, it gets you out there. It is going to increase the opportunity, as I said before, for partnerships and new ideas and collaborative approaches to bubble up to the top.
That is incredible. I want to thank our wonderful panel, who can now actually sit down. Thank you all so much. I also want to thank Dr. Osili again, who is just as good a moderator as she was a presenter. Thank you, Dr. Osili. We have a few last bits of business here. We have a few raffle prizes that we need to give away. Sorry? Drawing prizes. Thank you, Joe. That is an important fundraising point. We have 2 copies of Giving USA provided by our sponsor, Sandy McNabb of Alexander McNabb and Company. Thank you for that, Sandy. And I'm not sure if these 2 folks are here, but if they're not, we will figure this out. Our first winner is Lori Respass. Is Lori here? Hey, Lori. Great. And our second winner is Daniel Rosenstein. Is Daniel here? Hey, great, perfect. We also have 3 giveaways from the fundraising school. Lilly Family School of Philanthropy has provided a free course in Chicago The winner can choose one of 4 different courses, which includes Principles and Techniques of Fundraising, Developing Annual Sustainability, Developing Major Gifts, or Managing the Capital Campaign. The value of each course is $1,295. These are great prizes. And our 3 winners for these, George Ratton, Christina Bourne, great, and Juliet Yera. Is Juliet here? Hey, great, fantastic. An incredible coincidence that everybody was here, despite, as we said, the cold going around right now. I want to thank again our wonderful panelists and Dr. Osili for an incredible program. I also want to thank our sponsors one more time, the Fundraising School at IU Lilly Family School of Philanthropy, our meeting sponsor Evolve Giving Group, our sustainer level sponsor Alexander McNabb and Company, our in-kind sponsor Deja Views Photography and Videography, as well as the 2022 AFP Chicago Chapter champions whose support makes so much of this program possible. That is Advocate Healthcare, the Alford Group, Campbell and Company. And also our continuous learning pioneer sponsors Auction and Event Solutions, CCS Fundraising, Termolen Watkins and Brandt, and Virtuous. Before I wrap up and close our program down, I want to do a special shout out to the management team for AFP Chicago, who are often overlooked. Tricia and her team have been absolutely incredible to work with, and I'm sure you've all interacted with them over the year, whether you know it or not, and we're really, really grateful for their work. I want everybody to enjoy your day, and happy holidays, everyone. Thank you for being here. Have a wonderful weekend.